Hey guys, T here. Today I got to look at the Maass for you. Tier 6 German Destroyer. We got the Eric Bay build on the screen. This is a fault line match domination mode. And the Maass is quite an effective ship, as you'll see here. I think I've played about 5 games. I do have one upgrade, the hull upgraded. I'd recommend doing that one first. That'll increase your rudder shift, which is a problem on the ship, and increase your HP, which is one of the strengths. I do want to talk a little bit about the build right off the bat, though. I've got Gurn as my inspiration here. I think a lot of players are inclined to go for inspirations that affect AP damage. Let's just take a hypothetical example where all of these inspirations increase it by 5%, which would be a fairly high-level commander that had that inspiration. If you're playing a battleship that fires purely AP the entire round, how you gauge that effectiveness is this. If you get 100k damage without that inspiration, you would have 105k damage. So it's very easy to gauge the effectiveness on battleships, but for cruisers, destroyers, where a lot of your damage is coming from HE shells, torpedoes, that return is harder to gauge, and it's much less of an impact, in my opinion, and almost for sure in reality. Let's say you get 100k damage on this ship, half of it's torps, a quarter of it's HE shells, and a quarter of its AP. Well, take 5% of that 25,000 damage, and you're going to have a much smaller number. Whereas the penetration, harder to gauge because we don't know the base penetration values, but let's just say I get 5 or 10 more shells to penetrate that would have shattered, and let's say they ring up 1,000 damage. So all I have to do is land 10 more shells, and I already doubled the effectiveness of that perk on a battleship, which is purely firing AP, and it would blow the effectiveness of the AP damage out of the water. So again, hard to judge exactly how effective they are just because we don't know the base AP penetration values, but that's my thinking on it. And my Gurn's all level 9 right now, so it's not even necessarily a high level one, but I really don't have any way to judge the effectiveness on it. But my thinking is, with this really strong German AP, the more penetrations you get, the quickly, that'll blow up the damage values and pay for itself, with just a handful of pens. So they were able to take that York out very easily. I would not recommend cruisers and battleships sailing into the center, I call it a lake area, but this center kind of ringed area. It's very easy to get targeted from a lot of different angles, and as you saw there, he can't really turn away with that island blocking his rearward pass, so he's kind of stuck sailing forward there. Blast him with some torps, finish him off with the guns, easy kill. Now the Queen Elizabeth here, I'm just keeping an eye on my detection range. Inadvertently block a bunch of torps from whoever's behind me. No big deal, not my problem, not my concern. But here I'm just gently sailing forward, keeping that island in between me and him. And I fire one salvo, figuring as long as he doesn't turn, that'll hit him. If he does make some sort of course correction, I'll have this backup salvo to attack him with a new trajectory. So, pretty basic play, but as you'll see, quite effective. And again, just maintaining your concealment is the key to this play here. So, blast him hard, and he gone. Now on paper, the ship's concealment isn't that great, but you have Bay, you got Swirsky, and currently I'm running the second skill as the concealment, and that actually bumps it down to 4.6, which is, it's 5.5, which currently is tied with the Biscuit for the lowest on my build. Again, if you've been keeping up with this series, I don't have Tanaka up to tier 11, and so I'm only running a single concealment inspiration on him. Once he gets double, that will be the best concealment at the tier, but this one will be tied for second, which is actually fairly impressive given the fact that going into it, it's probably the worst. Now, my American build and my UK build aren't double concealment, so keep that in mind. I think if all my ships had double concealment, then this would probably still be the worst at the tier, but still quite effective. I mean, 4.6 is nothing to sneeze at, so very effective there. And you can see we're just able to blast people away with these guns. I mean, this very effective guns. You have 5 128 millimeter guns here. Reload on it, 3.7 on my build. You got 1500 HE damage, 3000 AP damage, 6% fire chance, so a lot less dangerous in terms of base damage values and fire starting chance compared to the Gaide, but because we're effectively, doubling the firing speed and you do have the 5 turrets, the extra gun, this thing puts out quite a bit of damage, and you need to respect the Maass if you're going toe-to-toe with this thing. Again, I've only played a handful of games with it so far, but they've all been good games. I mean, it's a sturdy ship with a really nice HP pool, and the damage output is fantastic. So, really impressed with the Gaide. Maass, maybe even more impressive. I'll let you know further down the line here, but, here this Colorado, I saw him shoot, so we do have a little bit of a window, and I'm pulling forward that I'll be behind cover here, so I have no problems just taking those shots. I was basically danger-free. All I got to do is keep an eye on the map and watch my right-hand side, because those ships that did capture C, of course, could pop up at any moment. But they have, bizarrely, they're kind of employing the black hole, sit in the base strategy, but there's no cap even there that they're defending, so this is even less of an effective strategy in domination mode. Perhaps they were starting off above A and then they've retreated, I don't know. But we're just going to zip right back here and start fiddling around with these ships that are back here. Now you'll notice I did briefly have eyes on that Jervis, which is the sole enemy destroyer. I was considering turning around to eliminate that ship, as eliminating all the enemy's destroyers is a massive advantage. And given that there's only one destroyer per team, the value of that ship goes up even more. But I figure we got a bunch of these people back here that are really playing ineffectively, and there are a lot of HP located back here and really strong guns. So if I can do some damage to these ships, that would be ideal. The Amagi was backing up, so I fired behind him. Then he briefly moved forward, so I assumed that was going to miss, but then he started backing up again, and unfortunately for him, that's going to cost him a little bit of HP there. Now, all I got to do is stay outside of that detection range. I'm fine, but I figure I'm going to turn around here just to maintain angles. I mean, I assume these ships, think that I'm going north, but if I go back down south, that'll throw them off the scent a little bit, but that'll also allow me to kind of manage how, regarding how these ships are moving. I think it'll allow me to maintain good torpedo angles on these ships and, keep them all out of my detection range. So that's why I turned around there. But all I'm doing is just gently sailing forward. I just want to make sure that the Vanguard doesn't pop into my detection range. You do need to keep an eye on the map. Look at the direction they're going and the direction you're going to. It's very easy to kind of sail at them at like roughly a 90-degree angle, and then they'll sneak in your detection range without you really realizing it. So just keep an eye on your map when you're trying to avoid being detected from ships like this, and you'll do just fine. Now here, this Vanguard didn't really strike me as someone who was going to be making a lot of evasive maneuvers, so I did fire both salvos roughly on the same line of sight. Now, they make some evasive maneuvers right at the end when the torpedo indicator goes off, but that's not going to save them. So we do pop a Confederate there. We're up to over 100k damage now. And keep an eye on the map here when I'm going against this Amagi. Now it is sailing towards me, but if I sail southwest, my plan is to just kind of skirt it so it'll gently go over the north end of my blue detection ring on the map there. And that'll allow me to get alongside it. You want to be firing torps at the broadside whenever possible. You're going to get a lot more hits, and it's a lot harder for those ships to avoid the torps when they're sailing at a broadside angle to them, and then all of a sudden they pop up on the screen. If they're sailing directly at the torps, and assuming they're not sitting straight or sitting still in the water, that'll allow them to potentially miss the entire salvo. So always go for broadside torp strikes if you can. And because we're gently kind of sailing along here, once we get these torps loaded, we'll have a nice salvo here. Now you can see the indicators pulling to the left. That means it's turning, so there's no point in firing one on the indicator. By now, it would have already missed just because they're continuing the turn. So I fired one slightly inward in case they taper off, and then one to the left of that to anticipate them kind of leveling off, which they do. Now at this point, this northern kind of zone of the enemy's control is just absolutely collapsed. You can see sitting still in a group obviously doesn't pay. So all my team had to do was really push north, and then we absolutely decimated these guys. So I started firing here. I got basically full health. We did hit him with one torp. I don't think we got a flood there, but I'm just going to pelt him here. Hopefully get a fire. That ship does have one fire, not caused by me in the rear. But as soon as we start skirting along here, I'm just going to switch over to AP and start bringing up some damage. And we are closing in a little bit here. The secondaries start going off, so this is a little bit of a dangerous situation, but this is kind of garbage time at this game. I'm kind of feeling like we already got it won, so I'm just kind of trying to get some extra damage here, and we do end up earning the high caliber with those salvos. I do end up slamming into the island here, so all I got to do is hit the smoke and then just kind of let the situation reset. Someone else is spotting them, so we're just going to continue to pelt that Amagi with these shells. And again, the AP very strong on the ship. You can see these numbers that are popping up here on the screen as we're hitting those shots. So again, going back to my build, all you have to do, again, I don't know how effective that AP penetration modifier is, but just assuming it's getting a few shells popping in here or there, that's thousands of damage. So until I have evidence to the contrary, I'm just going to assume that's actually a pretty effective perk on ships that are reliant on AP a lot. So you could consider using that on your USN destroyers. Definitely consider it on this if you do have it. If you don't currently, Gurren will be available once the Russians drop at some point here. And now this Jervis is moving in. We got multiple people shooting at him. I'm going to join in on the fun. We're just going to bomb them. And again, these 5 guns, you know, they're pumping out shells quite at a rapid pace. Compared to the USNs, I mean, 3.7 to 3.3 on my build, so it's nearly as high volume as the USN destroyers, which that's kind of their hallmark. So really effective guns on this, and we're able to pop him off for the 4th. Now, you know, I was briefly hoping for a crack in there, but low health, and we were spotted by the Mayoko, who didn't really have to try that hard to finish us off. So, you know, bottom line, the ship is awesome. I mean, the German line as a whole has been really impressive. The Tier 4 is kind of a little bit of a snoozer, but the Tier 2 and 3 are really fun due to the forward-firing torps. 5 and 6 have been extremely effective ships, and looking at the Tier 7 and going on the feedback I've heard, it shouldn't be any less effective. So hope you did enjoy that one. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. New to the channel, consider subscribing. Questions, comments, leave them below, and we'll see you guys all later. Alright, peace. What do you mean, alright, peace? There's still like 10 minutes left on this thing. Well, here's a little bonus I played right before bed. I'll just let you kick back, relax, and enjoy this one. But yeah, the Maass, 2 thumbs up. Keep it going.
Smoke generator started. Concentrate fire on the enemy warship. Problem solved, sir.
We destroyed an enemy battleship.
Engine boost activated. Attention. Reporting the target position. Enemy battleship sighted. Enemy cruiser detected. Enemy destroyer sighted. All stations, concentrate fire on the target. Engine boost deactivated. Gun set.
We've destroyed an enemy battleship.
Victory is in sight. All stations requesting fire on the designated target.
Screen. Requesting support.